Good evening, students. Today I'm making one video on the summary of A Tale of Two Cities. I have already made video on it, but then this is another way I'm sharing plot summary of the novel A Tale of Two Cities. So let us read together. The year is 1775. On a mission for his employer, Tellson's Bank, Mr. Jarvis Lorry. Mr. Jarvis Lorry is a senior person and he works in a Tenson's Bank. And this was the time, 1775. Travels to Dover to meet Lucy Manet. Right? So he moves to to meet Lucy Manet. On his way, Mr. Lorry receives a mysterious message and replies with the words recall to life. Right? So that's the messages that and message and replies with the words recall to life. This is the first part of this novel. When they meet, Mr. Lorry reveals to Lucy that her father, Dr. Alexander Manet, who she thought was dead, is still alive. So what happened in the beginning? Mr. Jarvis Lorry, he works in Tellson's Bank. He travels to Dover as a place to meet Lucy Manet. But on his way, he receives one message. It is very mysterious and replies with the words recall to life. So he reply recall to life. That's the first part of this novel, right? Okay. When they meet, Mr. Lorry tells to Lucy that her father, Dr. Alexander Manet, is not dead but alive. Dr. Manet had been secretly imprisoned for 18 years in the Bastille fort, right? So, Dr. Manet, Lucy Manet's father, he had been secretly imprisoned for 18 years in Bastille fort, which is situated in Paris. But his former servant, Monsieur Defarge, he is the servant of had been servant of uh, Dr. Alexander Manet, who now owns a wine shop in Paris that is a center of revolutionary activities, has smuggled Dr. Manet out of prison and hidden him in the store's attic. So then another character, Monsieur Defarge, he had been servant of Dr. Alexander and now he has opened his wine shop and he and that wine shop up above the wine shop, that's a place center for uh, revolutionary activities. So they, because Paris there is chaos and that's why his wine shop and above place of wine shop is set for meeting and all. So where he keeps Mr. Dr. Manet secretly, and then he saved Dr. Manet, and anyhow he gets success to take out Dr. Manet from Bastille cell. Now, meanwhile, Defarge's wife, Madame Defarge, secretly encodes the names of revolution's enemies into her knitting. So she does knitting, and then in her knitting, she expresses and quotes the names of revolution's enemies. Right? So who are the enemies? She expresses through knitting. Mr. Lorry and Lucy arrive in Paris to find Manet compulsively making shoes in a dark corner. Prison has left his insane. So then Mr. Lorry and Lucy Manet arrive to Paris, and then they meet Mr. Alexander Manet in the wine shop, Mr. Defarge's wine shop. That's a place in above the wine shop. There is a in first floor. It is that is the place for meetings, revolutionaries meetings. And then Mr. Jarvis and Lucy Manet met, and then they find that Mr. Alexander Manet is making shoes, and he's sitting in the very dark corner place. Why? Because he is not mentally fit. He 18 years imprisonment left him insane. Then Lucy lovingly restores him to himself, and they return to London. But Lucy, as a daughter, being a daughter, lovingly restores, she takes care of her father, and then father is restored, revived, and now uh, they return to London, and then everything. Then she very lovingly she brings her father to London. Now the year is 1780, after 5 years, right? This was the time, 1775, then 1780. In London, Charles Darnay stands trial for treason as a spy. So that Charles Darnay is alleged for spying, and allegation was that he secrets, releases secrets of London to Paris, right? And he is alleged for leaking out the messages, secrets to Paris, people, revolutionaries, right? So Lucy and Dr. Manetz attend. Here, when we meet first time to Charles Darnay, so he's standing for trial, and he's standing in a court for trial. And on the other hand, Lucy and Dr. Manet, means father and daughter, they come attend, having met. So they attend the same because they are they are informed to meet, to come as a witness, so they have to go. And then where they meet Mr. Darnay during their return from France. So then they meet Mr. Darnay. The defense lawyer is Mr. Stryver, and then lawyer's name is Mr. Stryver, but it is his bored looking associate. Mr. Stryver is a lawyer, and Sidney Carton, who wins the case. And then Mr. Stryver making argue in the court, and then he alleged to Mr. Charles Darnay. But what happened here, it is not given. Sidney Carton, one of the characters, one of the lawyers, he's associate lawyer, associate lawyer, and he comes and he says that uh, bec- uh, people get confused, and it was me only. And why? Because Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay resembles with one another, and that's why he makes argue in the court that it was me, and people get confused, not Charles Darnay. And this way Charles Darnay is saved, and Sidney Carton also wins the case. Carton points out how much he himself resembles Darnay in order to ruin the main witness's credibility. Why he is saving? Because he knows that Darnay is not culprit. So he himself resembles Darnay in order to ruin the main witness credibility, and he knows that he is not culprit but someone else. Now, in France, the wealthy aristocracy wallows in luxury and ignores the suffering people. And that's a whole novel is based on French Revolution. So here also we find the same glimpses of French Revolution. In France, what happened that people are aristocracy wallows in luxury. They were aristocratic people. They enjoying and they ignores normal common people suffering. Now, Marquis Saint Evremont recklessly runs over and kills a child with his carriage. Again, there is a story that Marcus Marcus Saint Evremont he kills a child with his carriage because his carriage is going on, and then one child comes under the wheel and he kills him. At his castle, he meets his nephew Charles Evremont, and that is Darnay, who has returned to France to renounce his family. So he meets his nephew Charles Darnay because Marcus Evremont and Charles Darnay are that's a he's uncle of Charles Darnay, who Marcus sent Evremont. Now Charles Darnay is known as Darnay, however, he is Evremont, Charles Evremont, right? So now Charles Evremont is not Charles Darnay is Charles Evremont. Actually, he comes from Evremont family, who has returned to France to renounce his family. So he comes to meet Mr. Marcus Evremont, and he shows his anger that he renounces his family. That night, Mr. Marcus is murdered in his sleep. But people are very much angry, and as he killed a child, so the revolutionaries, agitated crowd, they murder Marcus in his sleep. Now, back in England, Charles Stryver and Sidney Carton, three people, they come back to Sydney. Charles Stryver and Sidney Carton all frequently visit Dr. Manette and Lucy Manette, right? So they come because they all live in England, where Dr. Manette and Lucy Manette, father and daughter, they live. So they frequently visit to Dr. Manette. Now Mrs. Stryver plans to purpose to Lucy, but Mr. Lorry warns him that his proposal is unlikely to be accepted. So Mr. Stryver tries to meet Miss Lucy, but Mr. Lorry warns him that's not good, and then proposal is unlikely to be accepted, and then she is not going to accept your proposal. Carton also admires Lucy. He tells her how she makes him believe that, and then Carton also tries for courtship with Lucy. He tells her and he tells Lucy how she makes him believe that despite his ruined past, he still has a shade of goodness deep within him. So he wants Sidney Carton's problem is that he takes much liquor, but he tries to make Lucy believe that despite his ruined past, because he falls in love with one girl, and then onwards he start taking too much alcohol. So he he tries to convey Lucy that though my past is ruined, but I still uh, possess good qualities, goodness in my heart. But anyway, Charles obtains Dr. Manet's permission to marry Lucy. Third alliance come, that's a Charles Darnay, and he takes permission from Dr. Manet and for permission for marry to Lucy. But Dr. Manet refuses to learn Charles' real name until the wedding day. Mr. Manet, Dr. Manet gives permission, and then Charles and Lucy get married. And then on wedding day, he does not know who senior Alexander, Dr. Alexander does not know about Charles' full name or real name. He is happy with Charles, and that's why he is agreed. He becomes agree and he gives his permission to get married with his daughter Lucy. On the wedding day, Dr. Manet relapses into his shoemaking madness after discovering that Charles is an Evermond. And then here, Dr. Alexander is restored, because Lucy takes much care of her father, and father is recovered, and after 5 years everything is normal, and then everything is like life is normal. But as after marriage, as he comes to know who Alexander, Dr. Alexander Manet comes to know that Charles' full name is Charles Evermond, not Evermond, and then he becomes abnormal again, and he started making shoes again. Now, Mr. Lorry helps him recover. Mr. Lorry is very loyal. They are very good friends. They had been very good friends. So Mr. Lorry helps Dr. Manet to recover, and Charles and Lucy soon have a daughter of their own. And here, then Charles and Lucy are blessed to have a female child. Now, 1775, right? This was the when novel opens. It was 1775, right? Years, please take care. That's a 1775. Then that's a 1780, right? Then now it is this is the year 1789, right? So please take care. That's a 1775, 80, and after 9 years. Now this year is 1789. Defarge leads the peasants in destroying Bastille. Now this is a scene just like you you can compare with Bangladesh, right? When Sheikh Hasina had to fly away from Bangladesh, and she has taken what we can say that support from India, and she is moved to India, and then her place, and people were taking like anything from her residence, right? Similarly, you can Google and you can see that Saddam Hussein's dictatorship, when it was ended, so then people have attacked in his residence, and they have taken everything whatever they wanted, like chairs and tables and this and that. And similarly, same happen in Sri Lanka, right? So that similar scene you can imagine here, that peasants, they attacked into Bastille fort, and many peasant attacks, more than 100, and they destroy Bastille fort. Now he searches Dr. Manet's old cell and finds a letter hidden in the chimney. And who Defarge. Defarge wants to see that where Dr. Manet was kept in the cell, and he finds a letter in the chimney. Who? Doctor? Mr. Defarge. So that what is in that letter, it will be revealed later on. Now, the new republic is declared. Why? Because this is a reality that French people were struggling for republic and for democracy. And then this is the reality that in France, that's a dictatorship, and aristocratic people, they were enjoying, though they were not eligible, but then they were ruling in France. And then poor people, taxes were increased, and poor people were suffering like anything. So as they attacked, peasant attacked to Bastille fort, and then the new republic is declared. But its citizens grow extremely violent and imprisoning and killing aristocrat. Though its new republic is declared, and citizens are very much angry, and they start killing, uh, extremely violent, and then imprisoning and killing aristocrat. Whoever is coming from aristocrat family, they were putting them into the same jail, same Bastille fort, and then killing, murdering also. Now, Charles' former servant Gabel, right, writes a letter, because he is the very loyal servant. Gabel is very loyal servant from Evermont family. So he writes a letter from prison, because he is also prison, because he is loyal to Evermont family, and Evermont family is aristocratic family. So that is why Gabel has to pay for it, and Gabel is imprisoned. Gabel is pushed into the jail. So he writes letter to Charles. Charles secretly leaves for Paris. So as Charles gets letter, and then he secretly leaves for Paris and is immediately taken prisoner. But as he reaches to Paris, peasants and other revolutionaries and common people, they seize Charles and then put him into the jail. So he is taken into prison. Now, Mr. Lorry travels to Paris on bank business and is soon joined by Lucy and Dr. Manet. Here another development is there. Mr. Lorry travels to Paris because he is a businessman. He works in a bank. So for bank purpose, he goes to Paris, and where he's joined Lucy and Dr. Manet. Now, because of his imprisonment, Dr. Manet is a local hero. Why? Because Dr. Manet was the hero of other criminals or other people, other victims, we can say. They were in the Bastille jail or Bastille fort. Why? I remember one God sees the truth but waits. That is a very famous short story, right? And that is Sonte has written. Sonte, I think Sonte, or who was the author? I forget right now. But that's a God sees the truth but waits. That's a very famous short story in which a hero of the novel, he is present, and he is innocent, but he is present for 60 years. But he is gentleman, and he is victimized, and so he has shown his gentlemanliness, and he becomes the apple of eye of all criminals and other people. Similarly here, because Dr. Manet was the doctor, physician, very good person. So Dr. Manet has to um, spend 18 years. Innocent Dr. Manette, he has to spend 18 years in that jail. So he becomes hero among all people around him in Bastille Fort, right? He uses his influence. So what happened when his son-in-law, Mr. Charles Darnay, is imprisoned? So then this time he uses his influence to get Charles a trial, but it takes over a year. So he tries to he uses his influence, and anyhow he tries to save Charles Darnay, and he tries to fetch Charles Darnay from jail. Every day Lucy walks near the prison, hoping Charles will see her. Here, it is 1 year when Charles Darnay has to live in a prison. So every day Lucy, his wife, walks near the prison, hoping Charles will see her, and she is hopeful that Charles will she may meet with Charles. Charles is finally freed after Dr. Manette testifies. So because of support of Dr. Manette, Charles is finally freed, right? Now, but that very night he is arrested again, and he comes and he again same night he has to go to jail. He is arrested on the charges brought Dr. Monsieur and Madame Defarge, who is the main what we can enemies of Avermont family. This is Monsieur and Madame Defarge. They had been the servant of loyal servant to Manette family, but they are very much against of Avermont family. Why? One reason will be revealed here. Now we will discuss it later. But here what happens? Miss Pross, Jerry Cruncher have come to Paris to help. Here Miss Pross is a very loyal young maid servant, loyal to Lucy Manette, and Jerry Cruncher also. They have come to Paris to help Manette family. On the street, they run into Miss Pross' brother Solomon Pross, whom Jerry recognizes from Charles' English trial as John Barsad. So what happened that on a street they run into Miss Pross' brother Solomon Pross, whom Jerry recognizes from Charles' English trial as John Barsad. So that's the Solomon Pross is recognized as John Barsad. Now Sidney Carton also shows up and threatening to reveal Barsad as a spy. So Sidney Carton shows up and threatening to reveal Barsad as a spy. So he is threatening. Why? Because Barsad as a spy forces his cooperation to help Charles. So Sidney Carton also shows up and threatening to reveal Barsad as a spy, and he warns Barsad and then forces his cooperation to help Charles, and he says anyhow we have to help Mr. Charles Darnay. At Charles' second trial, Defarge produces Dr. Manette's letter. Now that letter which was found in the chimney to Mr. Defarge, now that letter is used here, and then in Charles' second trial, Defarge produces Dr. Manette's letter from the Bastille, which explains how twin Avermont brothers, Charles' father and uncle, right? They were Charles' father and uncle, right? Brutalized a peasant girl and her brother then imprison Manet to protect themselves, right? And how they brutalized a peasant girl, physically molested, and girl and her brother, and then imprisoned Manet to protect themselves, right? And Dr. Manet, why? Because Dr. Manet was the witness, and that is why Dr. Manet, innocent Manet, was imprisoned. Otherwise, Evermont brothers were very much aware that they will be killed by common people. Now, so here Charles Manet, Dr. Manet is imprisoned, and Charles is sentenced to death and sent back to prison. Now Charles is sentenced to death. Here, a last phase of the novel, Charles is sentenced to death and sent back to prison, and Charles is about to kill because Charles is given, that's the death imprisonment is declared against Charles. Now, realizing his letter has doomed Charles, Dr. Manet loses his mind, and then uh, Charles, uh, as Dr. Manet realizes that Charles is going to die, then he loses his mind, and that night he is not able to do anything. Then Sidney Carton overhears, and what happened in the meanwhile, another development is done. Sidney Carton goes to liquor shop, wine shop, and he overhears Madame Defarge at her wine shop plotting against Lucy and her daughter in order to exterminate the Evermont line. And here he overhears that Madame Defarge is making plot against the Evermont family, and now Lucy and daughter is also belong to the same family. So she, Mrs. Defarge, is making plot, and in order to exterminate Evermont family like line, everyone should kill from Evermont family, whether servants or whomsoever, or Charles Darnay and now Lucy Evermont. Actually, she becomes Lucy Evermont and her daughter also. Now, it is revealed that Madame Defarge was the sister of peasants the Evermont killed, and then the sister of the peasant, and she was the sister of the peasant whom Evermont family killed, right? So later on it is revealed that Madame Defarge was the sister of the peasants. Now so what to do now? Situation is worse. So Carton conspire with Mr. Lorry to get everyone is carriage ready to flee for England. So here Mr. Sidney Carton, he prepares, he just get ready to, he gets, like conveys to all that carriage should be ready to flee for England. So everything should be ready, and with Barsard's help. So John Barsard is the Miss Pross brother. With the John Barsard's help, he's a spy. Carton gets into Charles' prison cell. So anyhow, Sidney Carton is managed to reach to Charles' prison cell and drugs him, and he gives medicine to Charles, and Charles swaps swaps clothes with him, and he takes out clothes from Charles' body, and Barsad drags the disguised Charles back to Mr. Lorry's carriage, and Mr. Lorry is ready with carriage, and then Barsad anyhow drag, because Mr. Charles Darnay is not able to walk, he is unconscious. So Barsad drags the disguised Charles back to Mr. Lorry's carriage, which bolts for England, and anyhow they rushed to England. Now, here what happened? Madame Defarge shows up at Lucy's apartment, and Madame Defarge, uh, she is with this mindset that she has to kill Lucy also. So she goes to Lucy's apartment, but Miss Prose, who is the very loyal young servant and loyal to Lucy, blocks her way. So she does not permit to reach Lucy's apartment. And then the two scuffle, who uh, Miss Pross and Mrs. Defarge, they scuffled, they had fight. And when Madame Defarge tries to draw her pistol, and then she accidentally shoots herself, so she is very angry, annoyed. And then as she tries to draw her pistol, but accidentally she kills herself. The blast defends Miss Prose for life. So this way Miss Prose is saved, and on this way to the guillotine in place of Charles. Guillotine is the actually machine to cut the what we can say, that to cut the body, like cut the neck from the body. So that is used for capital punishment. So that is that place of Charles. So Charles is kept there, Charles's place, and Carton promises to hold hands with a young seamstress who has been wrongly accused, and Carton promises to hold hands with a young seamstress who has been wrongly accused. He dies knowing that his sacrifice was the greatest thing he has ever done. And then Sidney Carton gives his life, sacrifices his life. He is in that uh, guillotine machine, and then he dies. He is given capital punishment, but he is happy because he thinks that I have sacrificed my life for great thing, what I have done in my life, whole life. And this way story ends. So that is something very good story, A Tale of Two Cities, right? Now making another video in Hindi, where I'm using my study material. Thank you so much.